Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Was It Scary. And can I just say this first? Thank you for all the support on the last episode, dude. I definitely did not expect things to already be going this well. It's very ironic that in the episode where I literally said that my channel was on life support, that ended up performing better than the previous 3 videos that I uploaded before it. So I'm really thankful and I appreciate everyone subscribing. I appreciate everyone liking. I appreciate everyone commenting. I just appreciate all the support that I'm getting. So thank you. Also, for those who haven't seen this series before, quick premise, I'm covering stuff from the 2000s, 2010s mainly. It's not just going to be Creepypasta, even though the past 3 episodes, including this one, have been Creepypasta. I'm also going to talk about games and videos, and I am looking at your suggestions, and I have written a lot of them down, so please continue to leave suggestions. I forgot to say this. I don't know why I forgot to say it in the intro. Some of you are probably wondering why exactly this isn't the scripted video that I was supposed to drop, because I said I was going to be dropping those between these shorter videos, and these shorter videos are for fun and to take up more space so I can have a more consistent upload schedule. Long story short, I got in my head a little bit about it. I was trying to figure out what unique intro I could do for a video. I got stuck on that, and then I got stuck on scripting, and then I realized it had been like 8 days since I uploaded a video, and I was like, I can't fall back into the bad upload schedule. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop another Was It Scary, and then the next video will be the scripted one. So that's the explanation for any of the Yurisco fans that really just wanted to know for some reason. There you go. All right, let's continue with this video. Also, my criteria for these stories is pretty simple, at least at this point. It basically just boils down to how dated is the story, would it hold up today in terms of writing or visual presentation or whatever type of media I'm doing. Secondly, how did it impact me when I first read, watched, played it, whatever it is, versus how does it affect me now? And also, the final thing, which is, what do I think that the general reaction would be now based on those other 2 factors? So with that, let's just get into the story, dude. There's nothing else to really say. So Cove is a story by Chris Straub, and it came out in 2009 on his website, which the story will be linked below. Stories are always linked below. Everything else is linked below. Music, social media, all that stuff. Even my other channels. So Chris Straub you might know because he also made Local 58, which if you've read Cove, you would know that Local 58 is very important to this story as well. So the story is in a forum format, so it's a forum discussion of people talking about this long lost show from their childhood, and I really like that. That's a point already, just for the overall kind of story, because it makes the whole thing feel really realistic. If you're on this side of YouTube and maybe you've watched some of these internet mysteries videos or videos about lost media, you know that there are subreddits and internet forums dedicated to people trying to find weird shows from their childhood or weird videos they watched and things like that. So this doesn't really seem that weird to exist, even today, which obviously adds points because at the end of the day, that means that it's not dated in that form. The next thing is that there are like 4 people or 5 people involved in this conversation. Sky Shale, who is the one that starts it, Mike Painter, Jaron 2005, and Kevin Hart. Not to be confused with the comedian. So these people basically start off the conversation with Sky Shale asking, have you guys seen this show called Cove? I swear to you, there was a show called Cove. It aired in 1971 or 72 when I was a kid, and somebody has to remember. And by the way, to be more specific, it's on the Net Nostalgia forum, like the television section. So it is about like nostalgic stuff. It's a forum for that. And someone responds, and that person is Mike Painter. And Mike's like, oh yeah, I saw that show too. And I think I had a little girl and she was around pirates or something, and there was some creepy puppet that was with her. And Sky Shale responds, and she's like, yeah, okay, I really thought I was crazy for a second because I swear this show existed, but nobody remembered it. So I'm so glad that someone else remembers. And yeah, I thought Pirate Percy was really creepy because he was built from all these parts of other dolls, and it was really low budget looking, which I personally thought, as I was reading it, kind of added a little bit to the creepiness factor, because it's like, I guess it's one of those things where it is realistic because, you know, there's a lot of public access television, especially back then, but it kind of adds to the creepiness factor because it's like, I think it would be more off-putting, not only as a kid, but just like in general, if, I don't know, just the show looked really cheap and in like a creepy way, because it's not even like, oh, it's just a cheap puppet. It's like, I know the best way to explain it. If you remember a show, or if you've ever seen clips of a show called Peppermint Park, it's this show, I don't even know what year it's from, I'll put it on the screen, but it's an old puppet show, and the puppets are pretty cheap and they look uncanny. I don't know if it's because they're cheap that they look uncanny, but that's the best, in my mind, that's the first example that comes to mind when I think about a show like that. And something about it is off-putting because it doesn't feel cheap in like the charming way, like, oh man, this is something that was made by an individual person, you know, like when I sit there and I make those stupid skits, or I make those drawings and those animations. It might be more, even though it's still kind of cheap, it might be more charming because it's like, oh, this is a little thing done by a singular person. But in this case, it doesn't feel like that. It's really hard for me to explain, but I'm sure people know what I'm talking about too, just in general. When you see cheap, like, dolls and puppets and stuff like that, something about it is just off-putting. It's not even necessarily that it's the uncanny valley, although sometimes it's that as well, but it's just weird. I wish I had a better way to actually convey my feelings on this, so I'm sure maybe somebody will be able to voice it better in the comments or something, but that's basically it creeped me out. I don't know why. So I am gonna have points because of that. I also thought that the concept in itself played into, you know, the Mandela effect, this kind of phenomenon where people will remember one thing but it's actually another thing. I thought it kind of felt like that. As we go through the conversation, you're gonna see where one person will bring up something from the show and the other person will be like, no, it wasn't that, it was this. It was very similar, but it's not what you're talking about. And then someone else will be like, oh yeah, now I remember it right. It feels like that. There's a lot of Mandela effect in there. That's not really adding to the creepiness, but it kind of does add to the suspension of disbelief factor. I know I didn't put that in my judgment, but I always do think about that when I read these type of stories. Like, could I actually believe this exists? Also, another thing is, Jaren 2005 eventually responds to the whole thing. And they say something that I found really interesting was that there was Calliope music playing in the background nonstop. Usually, I'm a Calliope fan. I think it sounds nice. But I think anything with just a droning constant theme, unbroken, nonstop in the background, it would feel weird. It would feel off-putting. Because if you watch any show, any cartoon, music changes. Even in this YouTube video, I bet money the music has changed between me talking about this creepypasta and whatever I did for the intro. Like, there's sound effects, there's changes in background music depending on what emotion they're trying to convey. It's like, when there's just one constant droning theme, especially for an actual show, I feel like it throws you off. It feels unsettling. I think it also gives that feeling almost of like anticipation. Like it's building up to something because it's just constantly droning. It's so monotonous. Like, surely there must be something that's going to break this monotony, and then anticipating the thing that's going to break this monotony, it kind of makes you tense because then you're fearing like this unknown, this possible thing that might happen to break this tension. Also, speaking of Jaren 2005, this individual also mentions that it's on channel 58, which is obviously local 58. Now, I will say I'm still surprised that local 58 in itself doesn't have a Candle Cove episode or anything referring to it. The only thing that I think local 58 has is an animation about Cadaver. I think that's what the character is called. It's this little skeleton guy, and it is called like a show for kids. I think that's what the episode's called. So there is reference to kids shows on the local 58 channel, and I probably will talk about local 58 in this series because it is older. It's one of the first analog horrors, and a lot of analog horror is too new for me to talk about, so I probably will talk about it. That being said, it's also discussed about this ship called the Laughingstock, and one thing very interesting about this ship is that they have two different versions. One is the ship that they ride on, and the second is this cheap foam puppet version that talks. And one thing that's very interesting about this ship is that it says this strange thing. Anytime Pirate Percy and the crew are in front of a creepy place, right, a dark cave or a dungeon or a scary place, the ship always says, "You have to go inside," or I guess, "You have to go inside." And apparently it like zooms in on the ship, the Laughingstock's face with each pause. And I mean, I get it. There's a lot of, stuff like that, like little tense moments and creepy stuff that happens. I mean, come on, we got Courage the Cowardly Dog, dude. We can't really sit here and act like that would be weird for a children's TV show. But I could see as a child why it would creep you out a lot, because it's just like, it could be your first moment of true tension in a show. Could be on, this Candle Cove show with these creepy pirates and this non-stop playing Calliope music. You know what would be even creepier is if the Calliope music, that's the one time it cuts off when the ship is like, "You have to go inside," because then that would make it worse. I would think I was about to get jump scared. I'd be about to pass out. Even as an adult, I wouldn't be about to pass out. Let's be realistic here. But I would be a bit perturbed. I'd be a bit creeped out. I'd be a bit unnerved. Now, another thing that's very interesting is that Skyshale brings up a villain with these long teeth and this handlebar mustache. But in reality, this villain is not actually the villain. No, this creepy character is only the sidekick. And you may have seen this character before because it's one of the most prevalent images from the Candle Cove art that you may have seen. But it is not the villain. The villain is called the Skin Taker. When I read this back, I can unironically say, I can genuinely say that I started having flashbacks because I remembered when I listened to someone read this story probably like 12 years ago, and it immediately reminded me of how creeped out I was hearing about the Skin Taker, and I'll explain why. So as they talk about the Skin Taker, at first it doesn't seem that creepy. It's like, oh, it's just a weird skeleton guy, and he's wearing like a top hat and apparently a cape. I don't know what the cape's all about. And he also has these big eyes that are way too big for his skull, which again just points back to the cheap nature of the show, because if they actually had money, they probably would have got proper fitting eyes because they would have been able to have them, you know, custom made. But then, you know, something happens that reminds me of how genuinely good this story is. And I know I'm kind of giving away what I'll be saying about this story at the end as to whether I think it's scary or not, but upon reading this a couple times, I was really impressed with how natural the progression was and how easily we kept finding out more subtle details about this show that made it creepier and creepier. And one spot that this shines so much is with the Skin Taker. Because at first it's like, oh, we get introduced to this initial character that we're like, oh, this is going to be the scary villain. And then our expectations are subverted and we're told, no, that's only the sidekick, which automatically makes us a little bit tense. It sets us up because now we're like, oh man, what? This is only the sidekick, dude? What's the real villain? And then they're like, oh no, the real villain is called the Skin Taker. So now your mind's already wandering. What could this thing even look like? Then they explain, oh, it's just, you know, it's just a skeleton with a top hat and a cape. It's not that bad. But then they go on to be like, well, but hold on. Actually, the cape and the hat are made out of children's skin. Now, I don't know if that was explicitly said in the show. It seemed more so that they were kind of, what's it called? They were speculating on that because someone says, oh, is that, it's sewn up all crazy. Is that supposed to be children's skin? And then Mike responds and it's like, yeah, I think so. So I don't think they really know, but Mike then goes on to say that the Skin Taker was once asked by the little girl, the main girl in this show, whose name is Janice, by the way. And she asked him, you know, Skin Taker, why does your mouth move all weird? Because his mouth grinds. It doesn't move up and down like a regular puppet. His teeth grind together. And instead of looking at her and responding, he looked at the camera and said, to grind your skin. And they wrote it in all capitals. So I assume he may have even said it very loudly. And I'm just imagining, as a child myself, I was afraid of goosebumps. So I can only imagine how I would feel watching a show with something called the Skin Taker, as if everything else wasn't bad enough. And it looks at me and says that it's gonna grind my skin, dude. Not at the girl. That would have been scary enough. At me? Why would you do that? And you have to think about what type of individuals the people that created this show would be, or, well, I'll get into the theories later about what I think this is. But you gotta be a sick person. You really do. You gotta be a sick individual to make something like this and be like, oh yeah, the kid, we're gonna show this to kids. This is a good idea. And then we get to this other very interesting plot point, which is where Skyshade starts talking about how, you know, she's super glad that people remember the show, but also that, you know, she used to have this nightmare. And the nightmare is really weird, right? The show just faded in and everyone was screaming. Everyone was screaming, everyone was freaking out, everyone was just losing their minds, and Janice was crying, and it was really crazy and just terrifying, right? And she would wake up from the nightmare and she'd be so scared. And then Kevin says, no, that wasn't a dream. I remember that episode. Like, I'm 99% sure I saw that when I was a kid too. And then Skyshale's like, what? No, you couldn't have seen, there's no plot. Like, why would that be real? And then Kevin's like, no, I might have just made it up because you said it, but I'm 99% sure that I saw that too. And then Jared responds and he's like, no, I saw it too. I remember seeing her shake, and I remember the Skin Taker screaming, and it was so crazy that I turned the TV off. I told my brother, and my brother was like, dude, we can't turn this back on. We were so terrified. And first of all, like I said, I could just imagine, dude. Imagine being a child. You like this show, despite how weird it is. You turn on the TV, and it's just everybody screaming loudly, violently. The one human character, the child that you can relate to, is crying, shaking, genuinely terrified. They're effectively like torturing this individual, and it's real. It's not acting, and you see that. I mean, that might change you for real as a person. I can imagine how scary that would actually be. And the crazy thing is, it's 100% possible to make something like that. That's what scares me about this story genuinely, is you don't even have to suspend your disbelief that much. There could have been some weird public access show in the 70s with weird cheap pirate puppets that some little girl acted in that nobody knows who it is. This is 100% possible. I don't know. It just creeps me out because it's like, I know it's not real, but I know that it could be. And because it could be, I could have experienced it. Someone else could have experienced it. It could happen in the future. And sometimes I think about, like, especially with Creepypasta like 1999, which I will get to eventually, and this one existing with these weird public access shows, like, what if somebody's already tried this already? You know? I mean, think about that Nick Crowley video about that cult that made that really creepy kid show. That's real. That actually came out around that time. So who knows what could still be out there to be discovered? Who knows what's currently lost media? It's crazy. But Mike Painter responds to the forum, and he says, guys, I went and visited my mom today at the nursing home because I wanted to ask her about the show, and it was weird. You know, I asked my mom if she remembered Candle Cove, and she said, well, I'm really surprised that you remember that show, you know. And I said, why? Why are you surprised I remember the show that I watched as a kid? Like, you were there, you saw it with me. And she said, no, what surprises me is that you would tell me you were going to go watch Candle Cove every day around the same time, and you would just sit down in front of the TV and turn on a channel that was just static for 30 minutes. I mean, you were a kid, so I didn't think much of it. You know, I know you had a big imagination with your little pirate show, but it's just a little weird that you remembered it still. And when I read this for the first time, when I heard this for the first time, it hit me. But reciting it back now is giving me goosebumps. And it reminds me as to why this is a story that still holds up to this day. Because it leaves so much to figure out, right? I know I covered Dead Bart as the last episode, and a lot of you guys are coming from that, but I know that creepypasta also leaves off with a twist. And it might seem weird for me to hype up this twist, but not hype up that twist. And the reason that this twist is hyped up to me is because the delivery is different. In this, when we hear this twist, we start to reflect upon the whole story. How is it that all these people are sharing the same memory? How is it that all these people were in the same area watching the same show? They have the same memories of the same characters and the same episodes. They all share it. How is it possible if this show isn't real? And that's what's so terrifying, because then it leads to the question, is this show just on some weird frequency that only children can see? Is this show paranormal? Is it like a SCP? Or if you want to go into Local 58, which I'm not going to go too deep into it, could this be the work of, well, if you know, you know, some higher beings that exist in order to influence the children or terrifying them? And it's just something else. That ending always just hits. Even if I'm not scared, it just creeps me out a little bit, and it definitely gives me a little bit of goosebumps. And especially considering I'm recording this at night, it's working on me. So obviously, I don't even need to tell you. This creeped me out when I was a kid. It creeped me out as an adult. This is the first one, episode 3. This is the first one I will personally say I think it was scary. Per today's standards, I think it is scary. However you want to put it, it's scary. This story does so many things right. The progression is amazing. The way that they reveal these things, and it flows like such a natural forum conversation, but we're able to keep building up to these reveals over and over and over. It keeps your attention during the short read until it leads you into that final twist that just causes you to want to ask more questions, and it creeps you out, and it makes you honestly want to reread the story again to see if you missed any little details. But it's amazing, and honestly, it reminds me of another story that I'm very excited to cover, another forum-based story called Funny Mouth. That one, I'm not going to get into it, but I'm definitely excited to cover that as well. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you want to subscribe. I'm still trying to revive this channel. Come back for the next video. These will be coming out probably once a week still. Next video should actually be the big video that I said I was going to drop last time. So have a good day, and watch another video on the channel if you want. Or not. I don't know.